I'm Critics' Choice Association member Jazz Tangcay, and this is In Conversation with Is This Thing On, directed by Bradley Cooper. With us today, we have actor and comedian Chloe Radcliffe and casting director Shayna Markowitz. Hello and welcome to you both.
Hello, thank you for having us.
Hello,
Thank
thank you so much.
Oh my gosh, thank you both for being here. I'm so excited for this because this is such a great movie, a great, combination. Shayna, you've worked with Bradley before, casting Maestro. I'm just curious, like take us back. What did he tell you about, his latest directorial effort, which is this thing on?
You know, he's always looking to be authentic and be truthful to the story. So, in talking about the cast for Is This Thing On, we were looking to bring actors who are going to be authentic to the story, who are really going to capture that New York feeling, which I think you really feel throughout the film in all aspects of the cast, in the cellar, in all the comedy scenes surrounding Will and his family, just really being authentic throughout and bringing New York to life.
Not exactly sure what happened. Came home from work one day. Someone said, "Is this thing over?" Pretty sure it was her. Probably should have paid attention. That's what she meant about not paying attention.
A real relationship is finding somebody you can also be unhappy with. Somebody who has your back. We stopped having each other's backs.
So what? You tell jokes?
Well, I mean, I try. It's more like kind of funny stories from my life. And
Oh, honey, I had no idea your life was this bad.
Yeah, what's funny about your life?
This is why she threw you out.
I had heard bubblings of the movie for I think it was probably a few months before. And then but the first time it really hit my radar was when the or really hit my, full radar was when the audition came through. And I was lucky enough to have a Zoom audition with Shayna, and that process was so it felt so like seamless and easy, and it felt so comfortable. And I think it just sort of was the right match from the beginning.
Yeah. Well, Shayna, just going back to you for a second, you had to go through, you're talking about the authenticity, but you also had to look at so many comics. I'm curious, like, what did you have them read, and what was that specific, thing that you were looking for, and what was it about, Chloe that was like, she'd be great for this?
Sure. We one of the early conversations Bradley and I had were about populating this world of up and coming open micers around Will with comics that were not known or were not well known. So my office and I did a lot of research about who was performing at clubs that weren't necessarily the Comedy Cellar, but other clubs around New York City, and watching a ton of stand-up footage. And actually, I think it was my associate Leia who, even before we started, I don't even know if we were officially on, said, I saw Chloe Radcliffe do stand up, and like, here's her stand up, and we should just remember her. And I don't even think I had the conversation with Bradley yet, but as a casting director, you're always filing away interesting actors. And so when the time came to start auditioning people, Chloe was at the top of our list for the role of Nina. And we had everyone come in and do. We had already seen their stand up. I think at a certain point in the audition process, we also had them prepare 2 minutes of material like live with us. And then we also had them do the scenes, which the scenes, they're not monologues and monologues of dialogue. And I find actually that those are the roles and those are the auditions that are the most challenging, because you have to make sense of something with not a lot of dialogue. So we read the scripted lines, and then we also improved a bit, knowing how Bradley likes to work and knowing that probably each person that we cast would be bringing a bit of themselves into the role. So we wanted to make sure that Chloe and everyone could both act, could do stand up, could improv, could be comfortable, and then just meeting them over Zoom and finding out who they all were as human beings.
Yeah. Chloe, what is that like hearing Shayna talk about this for you?
It's look, I know intellectually how much dimension there is behind the scenes that I never interact with, but hearing it all laid out, I'm like, oh my God. I mean, it is striking me how lucky I am to have wound up in this position, and like how lucky I am that Leia saw. I have a solo show called Cheat, and Leia saw that a few months earlier, and I had no idea that the steps were already being laid out, that the dominoes were already starting to knock. I had no idea, and it makes me feel being on a movie set is, you are a small cog in a part of such a bigger machine. And this conversation is reminding me that the machine starts so much earlier than I have any comprehension of, and that I was already a part of it way before I was aware.
Yeah. And you've been in Steven Soderbergh's movie before, but what was different about this? Because I think to Shayna's point, you had to read scripted and then you had to do improv and bring yourself into that a little bit. Like, take me into that process of like, how different is it, or like how similar is it to just getting up, doing stand up, riffing some lines versus here's a script that Bradley Cooper wrote?
It was a very funny challenge of, how do I create a character that is not just me, but in a world that I live and breathe in every single day, and then improvise in that world, improvise in a voice that is not quite my own, but pretty similar. And all of that, I spent a long time rehearsing. I have a rehearsal partner who's a very talented actor in his own right, named Tom Chemnitz. And Tom and I just sat and we analyzed the scenes, and we ran the lines. And what was funny was listening to an actor read scenes that were set in the stand-up world. There were things that he didn't understand, and I would read a line and go, oh, I know exactly how this line is supposed to go. And he kept saying, you just hear the music. There are some times when you hear the music, and there's sometimes when you don't. And on this one, you hear the music.
Yeah. I love that you talk about like running lines. Did you ever sit down with Bradley or Will and just grab either of them for a minute and be like, okay, here are thoughts I have about Nina. What do you think? Or did you get any advice from them at all?
Bradley clearly responds to what is best for the art at its core. What is going to make the best outcome? It's like, at a holistic level, what is going to make the best piece at the end of the day? And I could feel that even in that conversation that I had with him, where I was pitching ideas about this day job thing, that it was like, some of the ideas work and some of them don't. And he's so able to be responsive in the moment and see what is going to be the best at the end of the day.
Yeah. I love that. Shayna, just coming back to you, I mean, Chloe as Nina was, such a great, addition to this incredible ensemble, but talk about building out the rest of, the comics that make up this world in the cellar.
Sure. I think, it was a mix of auditions and meeting comics in the way that we did Chloe, likewise with Jordan Jensen. And then there was a whole other realm where we were trying to create the comedy cellar. And so I worked closely with the manager there, Liz Furiotti, who helped to validate who would be authentically at the club. Greer Barnes and Dave Attell and Derek Gaines outside. And, even some nights that Bradley would be shooting screen tests, the real comics would be at the cellar. And so we ended up casting them in the film. So to sort of create that authenticity. And with Amy Sedaris, that part was actually originally written for a man, and Bradley and I were talking about it, and I said, well, what if it's a woman, and what if it's actually an iconic, New York comedian who, and so that's how we sort of came to Amy, which was such a blessing. Um, yeah, but so, just try to stay true, but also to be open. Bradley's super open and collaborative, and sometimes how something seems, we get it either spot on, or and other times something there's an idea and then we totally flip it on its head.
Yeah. I'm curious, like, how long was the casting process for this? Like, I think, especially now that the Academy, is recognizing casting, just really take us inside, like, how long it took, how many takes are you looking at, how many comedians are you, like, have you looked at, I feel like you looked at every comedian in the New York's tri-state area.
Well, casting, I feel, always takes as long as you have. And on this one, we had 16 weeks. So it took 16 weeks. And every role is different, and the demands of every role are different. You know, I like to be pretty specific, but at the same time, comics, and for those roles there was no one way to cast, right? Like, aside from someone being too well known, it could be anybody, any ethnicity, any age, not going too old, but to just because many open micers that are just starting up are slightly younger. But so because of that, I did feel like I had to leave no stone unturned. Similarly, for the young actors who play Will and Laura's sons, again, you never know where you're going to find young boys who can bring that sort of natural essence to playing brothers and playing sons. So again, looking at actors all over the tri-state area, like you say, to see who could feel like Laura and Will's kids.
Yeah. And Chloe, just coming back to you playing Nina for a while, like, what was that like, when you were done shooting, your scenes, what was that whole experience like for you? Especially, it is your world, really.
Yeah. Yeah. It's been strange to go back to the cellar after it was strange to go back to the cellar after the shoot. Um, it was strange even to be in the cellar and to be, sitting around the table, like shooting the shit with Will, like he's another stand-up. And of course he is a comedian in his own right, but in a totally different kind of comedy. It was a strange, like, blurring of lines. But the whole experience was uh so eye-opening, overwhelming at times, thrilling in so many ways. And I left just feeling so excited for whatever the next thing is down the line. Um, I'm excited to, hopefully whatever the next thing is, I get a chance to step even more outside of my comfort zone. Next time I'll play a stand up with my birthmark on the other side of my face.
And I guess, Shayna, the last question that I always love asking casting directors is, what was it like seeing Chloe on screen as Nina, and just seeing, like, all your work come together? Because as we said, you've been on this for a really long time. It's a lot of people that you're looking at, and this ensemble is perfect. And, you know, that's a testament to the work that you did in putting this jigsaw together.
It feels fantastic to see it come to life. I mean, I think we casting directors are one of the first departments on, and then we're the first department off before one camera rolls. Sometimes there's little things that leak into production, but for the most part, we're finished when cameras are rolling. So we don't see costumes or sets, or unless we're visiting the set. When we see the movie, it's all fresh except for those first auditions. So to see how Chloe's character evolved and changed, and Will's parents, Christine and Kieran, and just to see everything sort of come together in this way, it's honestly overwhelming, in an amazing way. And I feel super proud of this one, and it's great to see it come to life.
Incredible. Chloe, I can't wait to see what you do next. I'm with you on that one. Um, but
Thank you.
Shayna, Chloe, thank you so much for that insight into your process and for joining us today for in conversation with. And we look forward to for audiences to finally see is this thing on. But thank you again.
Thank you so
Thank
much
you,
for
Jazz.
doing this.
Thanks so much.